just protecting the minister. Now, I want to make a few statements as it relates to the appointment of the new commissioner. And firstly, the question would be, why am I standing here and not the minister, as it relates to answering you? Firstly, the Education Act suggests that the Department of Education shall continue to assist the minister in the discharge of his powers and duties. The department shall, subject to the general direction and control of the minister, be under the supervision of a public officer who shall be known as the permanent secretary, and consist of the Commissioner of Education. So in other words, the buck stops with me when it comes to personnel matters. There's been a lot said about the government and the minister and the decision of the to select the new commissioner, but there is no involvement of ministers or cabinet in civil service matters. Those are matters for the civil service. And so there is a process. So when we talk about political interference, when a minister is involved in the civil service process, that is political interference. I remember, the minister may recall, that we sat in a meeting, we've sat in various meetings over the last 6 months, in various boardrooms and meeting rooms. And one of the first asked, how will you ensure that there's no political influence into the process? And I said, that is my job, because that was the question. Their concern was that if we're going to get this right, how do you ensure there's no political influence? And I said, that's the responsibility of the senior civil servant. The public service regulations are clear that if any candidate for a post goes, lobbies, or discusses recruitment with a member of the legislature, they disqualify themselves from selection. So it's very clear that there is no political role in the selection of civil servants. How much did the minister know about the process? Absolutely nothing, because it was not his responsibility to know. It was my job to know the process, along with the Board of Education, who were responsible, again under the Education Act, to make a recommendation about who the next commissioner should be. On Monday, the chairman set out the process, and he named the members of the panel, and he talked about the process that the panel went through, which was a vetting of the applications, which includes security vetting, also interview. They did a presentation. We made a decision that we were only going to introduce to the board and put through an assessment process the individuals who we saw as the Commissioner of Education. And the chairman mentioned to you that we brought 2 individuals to Bermuda. Now, that was the process we went through, but the civil service process also has its safeguards in place. We would have to prove that the individual matches the job description. We would have to prove that there is not a qualified Bermudian to the Public Service Commission. We would also have to prove that to immigration. So in terms of and then the process goes to a recommendation from myself. I'm the one who makes the recommendation based on the information provided by the panel to the Public Service Commission. They review it, they send it to the governor, who signs off, and at that point in time, the individual is offered a contract. I need to state that I personally have a vested interest in the public education system. My grandchildren are in the public education system. They're not in private school, and I have a very tight-knit family that every time we get together, and the few times that I get together with them, every one of my first cousins has a complaint they want to know what I'm going to do about. So it's not anything that I can hide from, and I am not taking a position that it's somebody else's children that I'm affecting. It's my own. What's this really about? Because it's certainly not about Dr. Heatley. Because it wouldn't have mattered rather who the person was, as long as it was not a Bermudian. This is what we would have. In my view, it's a small group of disgruntled applicants twisting the facts to stir public emotion around Bermudianization. Articles on Dr. Heatley just assisted, and gave a vehicle for them to use. But had there been no articles, there's still would have been the same uproar because there is a view that the next commissioner has to be a Bermudian. Just to deal with some of the other rumors that have been stirring. A few weeks ago, it was stated that the ministry denied that Dr. Heatley was appointed the Commissioner of Education. Well, think about the process that I just mentioned. Somewhere in the process, someone had information that I would suggest maybe they shouldn't have had. But when that request came from the media, or when that statement, is Dr. Heatley the next Commissioner of Education, my response, because the spokesperson was me, my response was no, because Dr. Heatley had not signed a contract, the governor had not signed off, the Public Service Commission had not made a recommendation. So how could there be a Commissioner of Education? Whilst there was a recommendation, doesn't make him the commissioner until they say so. So there was no lie. It was fact. There's a claim that the advertisement and job description were amended to exclude Bermudians. The job description that we used for this Commissioner of Education was the same job description that was used for Mrs. Wendy McDonald. The job description for Mrs. Wendy McDonald required 15 years experience, and I've heard some crazy comments about 17 years is not enough. 15 years experience in the original application, and 10 years in a senior executive management position. The requirement for this position was 15 years experience, 10 years at a senior executive management position. So as a matter of fact, the job description that we built it on was the same, was written by one of those individuals when they acted as the permanent secretary a few years ago. So we did not change any job description to meet, to exclude anyone. The comment that qualified Bermudians have been overlooked. What is qualified? We seem to think that a doctorate suggests that that is all that is required to be in leadership. We don't think that when we go to the hospital. If I have a heart attack, I don't go to a general practitioner. I go to a cardiologist. Education is no different. The requirement for the job was a master's degree in educational leadership, and I already mentioned a minimum of a master's degree in educational leadership, and I already mentioned the year's experience. So a member of the public, well-known member of the public, put the names out there of various individuals. If people have the time to Google Dr. Heatley, Google those individuals, and look at their qualifications against what was requested. And hopefully then we will have some clarity around qualified Bermudians being overlooked. Over the last 3 years, I went into the ministry in November 2010 with a specific mandate from the Board of Education at the time, led by Darren Johnston and Vince Ingham, and the Minister, Dame Jennifer. And I had a unique background going in, having been an educator and having been a senior executive. And that mandate was to figure out what is going on in education. Why can't we move forward? What stops us from making progress and reform? What's needed to take us forward? And over the last 3 years, I've looked at that, and I think probably, other than those board members, including the present board, I'm probably the only person who could speak to what's needed to take us forward. And it is a matter that we all want change. I don't think there's a week that goes by that someone isn't complaining about the state of education. Everyone wants change unless it affects them. Well, change takes leadership, and it takes strong leadership, not only in this country, in any country. And so the fact that there are negative comments about Dr. Heatley does not concern me, because there's no fact behind it, and I'm surprised when people talk about the local media and how they don't believe half of what's written in the local media, but they can swear the Bible down on the foreign media. So, that is not an issue for me, because if the Royal Gazette hadn't taken down all the stories and Googles and whatnot on me, I don't think I should get another job in Bermuda either, the things that are said about me. I am controversial as well. And if you look back, you could see it. That's not what this is about. This is about taking our children forward. We are in this for children. The board is in this for children. We need leadership for the system. I heard someone say that the leader, why people need a lot of experience. 20 years, 17 years is not enough. Well, let's take 25 years of experience as a teacher. Does that make you a system leader? Or does that make you a good teacher? We are looking for system leadership, not classroom leadership. We're looking for someone, as I say, who's seen the movie before. If we could have found a Bermudian that met that criteria, they would have the job. We didn't. We have work to do. We have to develop capacity. That is one of the things that's required. We must ensure that Bermudians have every opportunity to achieve the top job. That is, I am as much for Bermudianization as anyone else. However, I am not for cutting corners, especially not where our children are concerned. So what were we looking for in the commissioner? We're looking for system leadership, someone who's going to take us forward, someone who's going to be looking at accountability, someone who's going to ensure that what is promised is delivered. We're looking for capacity development. Capacity meaning our leaders. We're looking to build them, and that's at the central office as well as in schools. We're looking for educational leadership in a constricted financial situation. And certainly you see that in the articles that are there. He certainly has and knows how to operate in a constricted financial environment. We're looking for educational reform in relation to 21st century demands. And we're looking for, most importantly, increased student performance. Every person in the civil service who comes in on probation. I started by saying the buck stops with me. Dr. Heatley has 6 months probation like any other civil servant. If he is delivering, then that is my responsibility to ensure. If he's not delivering, it's my responsibility to take action to ensure how we move forward. And I accept that responsibility. Since he reports to me, I'm quite confident that he can get the job done. And I expect to be held accountable for the decision that's been made. And I certainly will, and if you know anything about me, will hold him accountable to deliver what he has to do. Thank you.
We'll go first. We'll go Charles.
You did a number of assertions.
Assertions?
Most of the these comments that you're referring to, were they our media, or are you talking about the blogs?
Which comments are you referring to? Because in the last week,
Criticisms about this Dr.
in the last 3 days, it's been nonstop. So, you know, that's what I'm talking about.
It would be in the local...
It will be the local blogs, yeah.
Are you talking about blogs?
The local blogs. In relation to the stories that are written, at the end of each story,
I don't read blogs.
yeah, neither do I, normally.
That's online is what.
Yes, online, correct.
Talk is called blogging, too.
Thank you, Carla.
She's quite right.
Yes.
Anything else?
No, I'm-
Carla? Yeah, because I did the original story.
I know.
But, Mr. Jones, respectfully, I mean, the research that I did when I received some information came from legitimate news entities, not just, stateeducation.com, for example. How could that be ignored? I understand that you don't build based on one's character, based on what everyone has to say, but this came from legitimate articles out of the Clayton County area.
So am I to take it then by your comment that ZBM, VSB, and the Royal Gazette are not legitimate?
No, I'm not saying that.
So my point is simply that the same way you report, and we need to pick the truth and the fact out of it based on the perspective that's reported,
Right.
the same has to occur, I don't care which media it is. Secondly, we have to base decisions on fact. The fact that they've written a story that he resigned, they don't know the background.
Oh, no, I'm
No, I'm talking about the fact that he stopped bus service, or some of the stories. What were the facts? And if those facts were based on, if his decision is based on, let's use an example, his decision is based on information or actions that the board had required of him, and then the board no longer supported him when the noise was made, as an example, then he is where he is. But we have to go on what is fact. I mean, last week,
You're saying
Yeah.
back the layers, basically.
yeah,
Okay.
and last week I was accused of overstepping my authority. Does that mean I have?
Right. Oh. So morale, let's discuss morale for a minute.
Okay.
I mean, I commend you on your statement today. It was hard-hitting. The same people who you're referring to will be hearing you perhaps in print or whatever, hearing these statements, but then they have to work with Dr. Heatley. So how do you, or how does, DOE expect to deal with morale? Because I'm sure, although it might be nice to Miles, perhaps, it's a bitter pill to swallow.
Let's be frank. I think I have been all this time, sorry. So I can't be in the room.
I might have to rein him in.
But Minister did tell me I was unleashed today, so. Morale. The standard of morale is already a concern. I am concerned about students, right? We're too concerned about adults, right? If our children are going to go forward, we got to get out of the way. And I've been disappointed. I've been disappointed several times. Read the articles. I was a principal when it was pulled out from under me, right? As far as I'm concerned. I got over it, right? And I pushed on and worked hard, I believe, to get where I am today. Some may have another opinion. I expect the same. If they're in it for children, they will get over it, and they will do their best for children. No one has done anything to them. The system, there is a process. The process was followed, and they were not successful out of the process. It is now for all of us to put children first and to move forward. You talk about how do we get along with Dr. Heatley? It's no different than any new leader coming into any organization. Everyone needs to give them time to find their feet. If they come and they come the right way, and you know what I mean in terms of the social graces, we don't expect that everything's going to be okay, but we do expect that the general things of how we treat people will occur, and people will give an opportunity. I haven't said anything this afternoon to cast negative on those persons. I simply stated the facts based on the comments that are out there, are that we overlook them, and they should have the job. I didn't put the names in the public. That was done by someone else. So since it's out there, it's being talked about the why. I'm simply stating the why is that at this point in time, based on the qualifications that are required, they were not qualified.
But before you do, Carla, let me say this. It is dangerous when anyone starts to criticize and complain based on this assertion that they are eminently qualified. Because now the entire process is subjected to scrutiny and scorn because of someone's opinion when the facts aren't on the table. And I think the point that the PS said is very critical. When you look at the requirements, they weren't conjured up today or yesterday. They're the same requirements of the last commissioner. If the Bermudians don't meet the requirements this time, they would not have made it last time. So how can they expect to get away with the suggestion of being eminently qualified? And what does that say to their contribution to the matter of morale within the Department of Education? That's a question.
Right, but to their defense, they never, let's take that. It was put out there by other people. Of course, we knew how Bermuda works. Somebody probably fed it to them. But it was someone else. I was just happy to listen to a talk show, and someone started spewing me.
Yep.
So, but I don't remember, Mr. James, if you were there during Dr. Johnson,
No.
right? But Dr. Johnson was there, and he came in, and it was to do, part of his mandate was to create a succession plan for Bermudian to take over, right? Then we had Mrs. McDonald. So did DOE drop the ball in the succession plan if you go from Dr. Johnson to a Bermudian back to an expat?
Let me, what has to be looked at is what was the state of play when those decisions were made? What was the need of the then Commissioner of Education or after Dr. Johnson in terms of meeting the day-to-day requirements? If you may recall, in January of 2011, we made a decision to divide the responsibilities of the commissioner, that I would take over the day-to-day responsibility of the ministry and the commissioner would focus on teaching and learning and be out in schools. If you wind that back, when I came into the ministry, there is absolutely no way that a commissioner, I don't care who they are, could focus on reforming the public education system when they had to be concerned about the toilets that flushed, computers that worked, the finance. Those things are happening all the time. 36 schools, there's no way you're getting out of your office to look at teaching and learning. So add on to that, if you're doing firefighting and dealing with crisis, who then is available to look at capacity building or succession planning? It's all hands on deck. And so to that, our responsibility now is to put in place a pathway that identifies Bermudians who aspire not only to the commissioner, but to central office, to principalship, to deputy principalship. That's what we have to develop. That is part of, when I talked about Dr. Heatley, what is required, that's part of what his responsibility will be, because I talked about building capacity. So that has to happen. So I don't, I'm not going to be sad about what didn't occur, but there were some realities, and a key one being the Hopkins report and all the pressure from the community to do something. So it's difficult to kind of say you dropped the ball.
And my last question, Tony, what would you say to some critics who have felt that, saying, like I think it was around January 11, when the board seemed to get more control, for lack of a better word, that they feel that the board has been very micromanaging and I guess usurping some of the powers that were in the DOE that the board has now taken over? What would you say to that? Because some critics feel that the board had a lot to do with, going back to our original reason, Dr. Healy.
I know where you're going, and I'll go back there, because something I said in my comments was that I met with and agreed with the approval of the minister and the board, to take certain actions. So, yes, certainly did. Those critics are exactly right. And the board's tool was me, because that was what was required. If we were going to find out exactly how to take the system forward, we needed to understand what was going on. And so, yes, the board, we met, we talked, along with the minister, and along with this minister when he came in, with the new board, specifically to utilize my little knowledge of education to figure out what's going on and to bring information to the board so that we can start to make decisions to move the system forward. So we don't make excuses for that. Whilst there are individuals who have a problem with it, I don't have a problem with it, because I could tell you how much money we spend on education, where the staff are going in education. I could talk about every single aspect of the ministry.
Isn't that mixing apples with oranges, Mr. Jones, being that they're not civil servants?
I'm the civil servant. They weren't in there, I was. I was reporting to them.
So that's exactly.
Yeah, they're not in there, and they certainly were not directing me. My responsibility was to find out. When I say find out, was to look, kind of figure out what's happened, go back, use the board and their expertise, what they're for. Therefore, they're there to govern the system. They can't govern the system if they don't have information. If they're not seeing certain things occur as fast as they think they should, well, one reason is because things don't happen that fast in education. But another might be because there are obstacles in the way. And that's where I come in.
Exactly. Carla, if I may, Carla, it's very important, because as you know, whether it's the commissioner, whether it's teacher transfers, whether it's this subject, this one or the other, there's always a challenge that the ministry must deal with because the focus is on our children. The distractions are always going to be there. But as we clear the road, it makes it a lot easier for us to complete the process of transforming the system so that our children are best served. There are going to be those who will never agree with Mr. Jones. There are those who are blogging today that while they like Mr. Jones and they respect Mr. Jones, they think he should be gone. Well, he's not going anywhere as long as I have something to do with it, because he's the best technical officer, as far as I'm concerned, the ministry could ever find. And there are difficult decisions that have to be made. There are difficult processes that have to be done. What you're getting here is complete, open, honest, and transparent truth. And you will always get that from this technical officer, period.
I think there's one more question.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Did the board and the selection committee anticipate the controversy surrounding Dr. Heatley?
I think your question was, could we anticipate it?
Yeah.
We anticipated it, whether it was Dr. Heatley or Dr. Jackal,
As long as
it wasn't a Bermudian,
Exactly.
right? So, you know, that was my point. And I think if people are honest with themselves, they would agree. Doesn't matter. Those other things just assist the process of stirring.
Is the perceived problem again?
Sorry?
Is the perceived problem with Dr. Heatley greater than the problem he's here to fix?
I'll phrase it this way. I have spent, I've had 3 opportunities to be with Dr. Heatley over an extended period, when he came in and again this week, and when he came before the board, the interview, and on Monday when he was here. And I'm looking forward to it. I think he is the right person, you know, for the job. His personality, what he brings to the table, his knowledge, his experience, it exudes from him when he speaks. You know he knows of what he speaks. I thought you said, yeah, we take it.
Carla wants one more.
Jonathan and Carla have been
He was my
really into
teacher.
this.
That's your excuse? That's your excuse?
He gave me a B.
Oh, must you remember the grade?
I don't know if you can, no, real talk. I don't know if you can speak on it, but how is Dr. Healy feeling about all of this? I'm sure he anticipated it to some degree.
Yes, he spoke
But
to,
how-
sorry.
I know he did the press conference, but how does he feel, like, because it's going on and on and on.
Yeah, that's fine. He said on Monday, you may have Googled me.
Right.
He figured that the press on Monday would have asked him. That's why he put it there. So, you know, he's kind of disappointed that there wasn't enough guts to say all the things that are out there after he left. But how's he feeling? He's looking forward to coming because he believes that once people meet him, talk to him, see him, they will understand that he's only here for one reason, our children.
You said that in his statement. Well, that could,
I did have a couple myself, but I'll be quick with it. You were saying that it would have happened with anybody. I mean, there was, I've heard in the House of Assembly, I believe Mr. Burgess was taking yourself to task, Senator, about when he had heard that there was a selection of a candidate from overseas. Why did you pick someone with a controversial background? Were there other possible candidates who wouldn't have had that? I mean, do you really think if it was anybody, they would have created such a firestorm?
I think you're being naive. You are. You've been in this community long enough to know. I mean, we just had, what, a head of the regiment who, non-Bermudian, was it quiet? He didn't have any skeletons in his closet. Still was noise. We've had a few recent, and every one has been a storm. And so that is, so yes, I believe that whoever it was, if they were not a Bermudian, this is where we would be. And frankly, if you look at the way the week has gone, the first, if I call it, attacks were against Dr. Heatley. Yesterday, it was about Bermudianization, which is really what I believe is at the heart of it. It was, you know, because it is not a Bermudian. The discussion yesterday was how could it be, how could a Bermudian not be ready? will not be qualified. That was the discussion. There were even people putting forward proposals for who should be the next commissioner. I mean, they were nominating people on the radio.
That's right.
Ridiculous.
My other question was, are we going to have somebody, a local, effectively shadowing Dr. Heatley this time to take over?
We are not promising the job to anyone. The process, we will set in place a succession, career development pathway,
That's right.
right, that will allow persons, and you notice I said plural, persons, to develop. Because we're a small country, we need to recognize that, and we need to find our best talent, and we need to grow that talent, and then we need to see where we are. So I don't think we should be saying that, we're picking this person and that's the next commissioner. I think where we are, we need to determine who are our brightest and best. And there, internally in the ministry and across the system, we will be doing that immediately in September, a first step in that process of identifying, people self-identifying their interests.
And Jonathan, let me say this. Even in the blogs, there has been much attack, but there has been no attack on the integrity of the people involved in the selection process. What you've seen is disappointment in the result because it was not a Bermudian. But the integrity of the process is not in question. Therefore, the issue is Bermudianization.